It involves talk of alien sightings at Bayside Marketplace.
Shadowy, dark, solid shapes, not human. I promise.
Eyewitnesses claim to have seen 3 very tall, non-human
and then we
figures.
see these 3 9, 10-foot tall creatures.
New Year's Day, 2024, downtown Miami, Bayside Marketplace. Thousands of shoppers are sprinting out of the mall. Cops are arriving in waves, not 1 or 2 cars, but hundreds of them. Officers are armed with high-powered rifles, and in the chaos, people are claiming they're seeing entities, weird 6 to 12 feet alien-like creatures. I know, it sounds like a Michael Bay film, but this actually allegedly happened in 2024. The official police reports, they say it was just a teen brawl that resulted in all of this madness. So that's it, right? A little fight, case closed? No. Why did over 100 individual police units show up for a teen brawl? I'm no expert, but that's really weird. That's suspicious. Let's get into it. So to start, I've developed a little timeline on this subject, and this is pretty basic level research, so take this with a grain of salt. From what I found though, at 4:40 p.m., posts on r/Miami and the Citizens app started mentioning about this police presence. They start talking about fights going around at the Bayside Marketplace. They start talking about police officers showing up, escorting people out of the mall. Nothing suspicious, but it does sound like there was an event going on that day. At the same time, posts on X started showing up of teenagers fighting random people, kicking cars, and just kind of some general chaos. At 9:30 p.m., 5 hours later, 2 cars, a black Infiniti and a gray Kia, crashed near Northwest 5th Avenue and 177th Street. They flip over and hit an electric box. This crash causes power to be cut out for the entire Miami Gardens area. The Miami Gardens police and fire rescue respond promptly. By the next morning, the mall is now empty. The police are gone, and the internet is full of wild rumors. At 8:04, the first news articles seem to drop. Official statements are made, and eyewitnesses start telling their very own, very different story of what happened that night. So now, it gets a little weird when you start looking at what people were saying online. To start, only 4 teens were actually arrested as a result of the entire ordeal. There was one 14-year-old, 2 15-year-olds, and one 16-year-old, and they were arrested for charges of battery, third-degree grand theft, burglary, and resisting arrest without violence. These are all pretty normal charges, but when you take into fact that roughly 123 police cars showed up for 4 teens getting arrested, it gets really, really weird. Similarly, people online started saying that they were having electronic issues during the incident. People were talking about dead cameras, they were saying police scanners weren't working, and that police were communicating this to civilians. People were even talking about flight restrictions and airport closures. So very clearly, something really weird was going on. TikTok and X blow up with the hashtag Miami Mall Aliens video, hashtag. And I still see videos and talk about this to this day. We've never really gotten a concrete answer on what happened. Multiple people in the aftermath say that law enforcement forced them to delete photos and videos from their camera roll as they left the mall.
As a cell phone, why were there no actual photographs or videos just from civilians?
As they were leaving the mall, the cops had surrounded the mall and were stopping people and checking their phones and deleting photos and video.
And that law enforcement officers were checking their phones. Similarly, people say that their own files were just gone on their phones the day after and weeks after. They say that they had videos and photos of the aftermath or of the event that just mysteriously disappeared.
And to my boyfriend at the time's apartment, taking videos of what happened, sending it to my boss. My boss couldn't really depict what the fuck was happening because it was so pixelated and so small. And then I, days later, try and go back and find the videos. I can't find them on my phone. Months go by. I can't find the videos on my phone.
And the biggest head scratcher is the fact that there was no security camera footage throughout the entire thing. No videos of teens lighting off fireworks, no videos of the teen fights from security camera footage. There's videos of some things from people recording, but no security camera footage was ever published. It's really weird. And the biggest weird factor of it all, again, is that 123 police cars showed up for the response. For reference, there were mass tragic events that had smaller police presence than that. So it really puts it into perspective that that's a really abnormal number. They said that all on-duty police officers were sent that way, and a lot of people pointed out how that's unusual protocol, especially for a mall team brawl fight, as the narrative states. So now, the internet explodes after this event, and there are a few ongoing theories. The first one, which is the less popular theory, is that there was some kind of MK Ultra style military experiment. They said that the government was testing crowd control technology on civilians with projected holograms, aerosolized compounds, and sound frequencies. The goal of this was stated to be to induce hallucinations, paranoia, and maybe even violence, and the mall chaos was just a side effect. Now, I don't believe that theory at all, because I don't think the government would just poison a bunch of people in a mall in open. I think they'd be a little more sneaky about it, just a little. And also, there's no evidence for any of that. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, people say they saw stuff, but there's no evidence that there was like sound frequencies or canisters of aerosolized compounds. Like, that one's a little out there in my opinion. The second, way more popular conspiracy theory is aliens. And let me get into this. Multiple people reported seeing 8 to 12 foot alien beings showing up at the mall. They caused electronics to fail, and they said that law enforcement flooded the scenes to contain the aliens. The fear and evacuation that went on in the high law enforcement number at the mall was all due to the fact that it was a huge alien cover-up. So now, don't get me wrong. More than anyone else, I love aliens. I want aliens to be real. I think that would be so cool. And I also love conspiracy theories too. There's a lot of fishy stuff that goes on, and I think it's important to be aware of it. But I also like thinking about things objectively and kind of getting a big scope on what actually happened. And the deeper I looked into this, the less and less convincing it became that there were aliens there. To start, there were a few eyewitnesses that later admitted they were trolling. There's an exact quote from a news article I'm going to pull up right now. I actually don't have it, but I'll flash it on the screen. Maybe I'll do a clip insert of me putting it in here. Who knows? The second thing is the Miami International Airport confirmed that there were no travel warnings that day, but there was limited parking because it's New Year's Day. And there's this website called Flight Radar 24 that shows the departures and arrivals versus expected departures and arrivals. So it basically shows what they expected versus what actually happened. And if you look at it for that day, it's completely normal. You know, there's a few delays that happen for planes as usual, but nothing crazy, nothing weird, no absurd hour-long delays, just, you know, the average like 10-minute kind of thing. Everyone was talking about like the weird technology issues and all of the lights and stuff going on, but I feel like a lot of that can just be explained due to the fact that, you know, 5 hours later there was a car crash that knocked out power to the block. Like, I don't know, I don't think that's a crazy assumption to make. People were also stating that the police intercoms and police radios weren't working, but there are police voice logs that you can find that are publicly available, and there's not a single mention of electronic failures. Like, I've read through a lot of them. They did, however, mention reports of riots and officers seeing masses of people, talking about people fighting. There was a mention of an individual with a potential knife. They were talking about cars being tipped over, like really like chaos at the mall that day. No mentions of aliens though, nor mysterious technology. So it raises the question of what really happened there. And I think the first thing to address is why there were so many cops there that night, because that is the biggest piece of evidence I see so many people using to justify why there were definitely aliens that night. But I think that you need to kind of give a little context before you immediately assume aliens. To start, you need to remember it was New Year's Day in Miami. People are drinking, people are partying, it's 4 p.m. I've seen college towns on a Saturday go crazy. Now imagine Miami on New Year's Day. Like, obviously there's going to be a little bit of trouble there. There's tons of people, they're probably drunk, they're partying, it makes sense. But still, 123 cars, that's an absurd response. But here, listen to this. So, a few days earlier, before that, there was a pre-New Year's attack in New York, and the Miami police had been briefed for potential copycat attacks. A lot of Miami police officers were literally on standby, on guard for any potential activity, any potential threat, terrorist attack, anything that could happen. And they were just waiting for a call. So the second that something happens, obviously they're going to take it seriously and address it quickly. And you may still be saying, why would there be 123 cars? But just wait. The standard police protocol states that for riots, the police need to generally try to outnumber the amount of people there. And the reason for that is, if there's 3 cops there and there's hundreds of people, they're not going to do anything. They can't subdue that many people safely and effectively. And so it's important to recognize that when they're getting reports of hundreds of people in this outdoor mall rioting, and there were fireworks going off that were potentially mistaken for gunshots, they're going to take that seriously, and they're going to think of that as an active attack. So obviously they sent a lot of personnel there. I think 123 cars was definitely overkill, but I think that they had a mentality of rather being safe than sorry. And they likely were saying, like, okay, let's send as many people as possible there just in case this is a huge thing, because they would need as many people as possible there if it was. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a pretty big event. There were a lot of people there and there was a lot of chaos going on. But I think that can kind of explain the high level of police protocol and why, like, they were heavily armed with high-powered weapons too. Because if they did think it was a terrorist attack, like they had been briefed on hours before, they'd come prepared. I don't think that's unreasonable to say. In a lot of the early 911 reports too, the fireworks were mistaken as gunshots too. So I think it's safe to assume that the police likely thought there was an active shooter threat going on there. So I think that kind of explains why there was a heavily armed response. If you put all of that together, I think it can kind of explain why there were 123 officer or individual police cars there. Don't get me wrong, that's still an absurd number. I think that number is a little strange, but I think, like, I would rather assume that it was them being rather safe than sorry over aliens, you know what I mean? There were a few other fishy things about this event, though. The next one I want to talk about is something that I see in so many conspiracies and event-related, or tragic events related in today, is the lack of security camera footage. This was an outdoor mall in Miami. There are security cameras everywhere. There are videos of people on YouTube walking around pointing out all of the individual cameras, yet none of them had released footage from anything. Now, I see this happening all the time with events. People are always like, where's the footage? Where's this? Where's that? Look at Epstein. I mean, that camera seemed to fail, although I think that's unrelated. That was a bad example. But still, it's really fishy that there were that many cameras and not a single one of them could be published to show, like, hey, there were no aliens, it's kids lighting off fireworks. But I think that there are also a few reasonable explanations for why this might have happened. It's possible there were faulty IT people and their cameras just weren't backing up, or that the power outage 5 hours later, potentially knocked out earlier backup so they genuinely lost everything. But then why not just say that? Like, I feel like it would be very easy for, like, mall staff or camera staff people to be like, yo, we literally don't have the footage. This power grid was shut off by a car crash. Case closed. Like that, with the amount of coverage this got as aliens, I feel like that would have been the easiest thing to do. The other thing I've also wondered is if it was, like, a legal thing too. Because I know there are a lot of laws regarding if you can or cannot record someone without their permission or without their consent and then publish that online. And considering there were so many people there, I think they might have been worried about lawsuits because, I mean, worst case scenario, they publish some public footage and, there's someone in the background and they sue them saying, I didn't give you permission to publish this. But then again, in an event like this, I feel like it's reasonable to publish that kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like that doesn't hold validity. So I still think that's fishy personally. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to justify why there's no footage. I think that that's really weird. But also this happens at, like, every weird event now, so I don't think it's too crazy. There were also police reports, or there was also like an official police, like, briefing, I guess, to the public. It was done via Instagram where a certain officer talked about it, and he pretty much just said what I said. A lot of people rioting. They sent a lot of people over there because they were unsure how many people were going to be there. There were no aliens. And everyone immediately was like, you're covering up the aliens, you're hiding the footage, this, that, and the other. But I feel like that's kind of a wildish claim. I mean, you could literally, like, substitute alien for anything else. And half of the reports were talking about, like, large, unhuman, shadow-like figures. So I don't even know. I feel like when you're in an event where you think a potential shooting is going on, you're scared, you're running, things are moving fast. I don't think it's crazy to say that, you know, people probably saw some genuine shadows of people running and tons of other people and thought, you know, in the chaos, oh, aliens. And they see the story online, then it just builds on itself. They see other people saying the same thing as them, and they build it up. Through all of this, though, to be honest, I really don't think there were aliens there that night. I'm a skeptic. I like to keep my mind open about things. But I think the majority of time when stuff like this happens, it is people posting about things online for clicks, views, reposts, for online clout, pretty much. I've seen a lot of supposed videos and photos of the aliens, and like 90% of them are AI, flash on screen all the AI photos. And the other ones are just like very blurry photos from afar that could literally be like a smudge on a camera lens, like that Rick and Morty episode. But I don't know. To be honest, I don't think there were aliens. I don't think there was military mind control. And I don't think there's a Queen of England. I just honestly think that this was a perfect storm of miscommunication, gunshots or fireworks mistaken for gunshots, police being already on high alert, and Miami being Miami on New Year's Day. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think there was something actually there? Do you guys think these reports are real, or do you think they're just people on the internet looking for clout? Anyways, thank you for watching. Have a great one.